word that's been coming up for me a lot lately is grace. Like, I don't think I've been really graceful towards myself. I don't think that I've offered a lot of grace to a lot of other people in my life. I've always been very hard driving, um, you know, commanding and demanding the best. Um, and then you get smacked in the face with something that you can't control. And so for me, it's really about stepping back and looking at every situation with a different lens of compassion and caring that I didn't have before, because now I need people to see me with that lens.
There are times when life just brings you down, 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 down to the ground. And it's hard when you can't see the light, 'cause things don't look so bright. So now it's time to reframe and retrain your brain. It's time to look for the good. You know that you should. Why don't you join me? 'Cause I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Oh, oh, oh. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine.
I'm Karaleigh Garrison, a singer-songwriter, motivational speaker, and your host of the Seeking Sunshine podcast, where we find the positive in the trials of life. I created this podcast because I believe really deeply that we can learn from one another's stories and experiences. I'm willing to bet that just about all of us have been through some really, really tough things. And not only is it therapeutic for us to be able to talk about these darkest times in our lives, but the lessons that we've learned and the resilience we've shown can help everyone around us weather their own storms from higher ground. On the Seeking Sunshine podcast, we don't shy away from difficulty and trauma, but we always look for the sunshine in it. It's my personal belief that there are blessings in every trial and trials in every blessing. I use this Seeking Sunshine mantra every single day to change my perspective when things start going wrong and getting frustrating, which they often do because I have 3 kids with special needs. And I can tell you that it has transformed my life. And I hope, and that's the whole point of this podcast, that it can transform your life too. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today on the Seeking Sunshine podcast. I am so excited that you are here, and we have such a great episode today. So I am going to dive right in and introduce our amazing guest. Today our guest is Shannon Weatherly, and she has such an amazing story to share, and I'm really, really excited for you to hear it. So Shannon is a former therapist, and she's had this incredible career. She got to work in Washington, D.C. She ended up in the pharma industry, and this road that she's walked has been paved with like tons of hard work, a lot of hard times, and then just this really crazy experience that she's going to share it actually helped me a ton to hear her story, and you're going to hear how that happened, like how that works out along the way. Like, I was just blown away to hear her story, and then like how hearing her story helped me with what I needed to hear when I heard it was really, really amazing. Like, it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And then hearing it again today as I was going through and pulling out quotes was just so profound. So I know that you're just going to love this. In 2021, Shannon was diagnosed with a rare neurological condition that she still deals with, and she's had to learn how to slow down, which was, that's exactly what I've had to learn how to do. And I know that so many of us need to hear that message. Like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take care of your body. And like, how many of us are not doing that? And so this is it's such an amazing message for all of us, and there's just so much for us to learn in this story, and it's really, really exciting and engaging, and like, I loved hearing this story again even after I interviewed her. It's such a really, really great episode today. So welcome, Shannon. This is such a good story for everyone to hear. Let's dive in.
Hi,
Hi, Shannon. I'm so excited to have you today on the Seeking Sunshine podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking interest in my story. And I hope that whoever's out there listening can walk away with something that makes them feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. We're looking for the sunshine. So let's dive in. I'm really excited to hear about your roller coaster of a ride that you've been on.
Yeah. So I would say my roller coaster starts in October of 2017. Um, I have had a very storied career and, have been really lucky to have opportunities placed before me, either due to my own hard work or due to someone else seeing something in me that I would have never seen in myself.
Or
Um,
both, or both. I think
or
both of
both.
those are essential components. Like you have to have the hard work and the I don't know if you want to call it luck or whatnot, but
Yeah, it might be a little bit
you
of
got to
luck for
have
sure.
you got to have both components.
So I started my career in child welfare, working as a therapist in a very large group home in South Carolina, Carolina Children's Home, and then meandered my way out of being a therapist, uh, which it's funny, I'm probably headed back in that direction at some point, but got into substance abuse prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery, and spent about, I don't know, 15 years in that space, making my way all the way to the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, where I served
Wow.
in the Drug Free Community Support Program for the first 4 years of the Obama administration. So I'm a kid of teenage parents and who neither necessarily went all the way through college, and some are first generation college attendee, and certainly never thought I would find myself working for the White House, and there I was. And so, at 35 or 36, I'd kind of reached the pinnacle of my career, some might say, and made the choice to leave Washington, D.C. after being there for nearly 10 years. And it was really, really hard to find a job that was going to use all the parts of me that I was used to using. I think working for the White House is intense. It's constant on the go. It's vacillating from in the weeds to, really high level, and that's a space I'm really comfortable in. Um, and so when I moved back to North Carolina, which is where I live now and where I had grown up, um, I worked for a small nonprofit in the Raleigh area and quickly realized, well, this isn't going to be the thing. So started looking and got approached by a nonprofit in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is about 3 hours away from Raleigh, and agreed to take that job mainly because it was an area of public health and um, work that I'd not really ever done. And so I was like, yeah, go do something I've never done before. I mean, I'd done the work of program management, budget management, those kind of things, but it was just in a different area than I was used to. So I get there, and within about 2 weeks, I realize I'm in trouble. I realized I'd probably made a really bad professional decision and um, worked from the get to try to get out of there. And it took 2.5 years. And the result of me leaving was due to a layoff. A
Wow.
layoff. And if
Yeah.
people could see me, they would see that I'm using air quotes. So it was definitely a conscious downsize decision from the executive director, who, to this day, if I saw her, I would be like, I think you made a decision you had to make, not necessarily one that you wanted to make. And so there I was. Um, in my mind, I had trapped myself into this space of I am my job. I'm not married and I don't have children. And, we often hear about mothers or women who leave the workplace, become mothers, and they kind of lose themselves in becoming mother and wife and all these things. I'd really lost myself in being a career person. Um,
It's so funny because I talk about that a lot. I'm so passionate about how women lose themselves, whether it's
mhm,
in motherhood or in career. We are just taught that those things they define us.
yeah.
I have three kids on the autism spectrum, and so like my last decade has been like, oh, you're a mom, but then because my kids are special needs, it's like that's all I will ever be is
Hmm.
caretaker, and like that's my new identity. Congratulations. It's been handed to
Mhm.
me without, me making a choice. And then as a career woman, it's like, well, you just kind of wind up there. And then it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, where did the person go? Where did the college me go who was pursuing all her passions and who had all these talents and dreams and things she wanted to do? And then we just kind of lose ourselves. And so I'm really
Mhm.
passionate about, women finding themselves again and remembering what our true passions are.
Well, and I think if I was having a conversation in a room full of women who are mothers, they would envy me in some way that, I've had an amazing career. Can't I mean, I still have an amazing career. But that layoff, it's sort of like when women who are moms and wives go through a divorce or the kids go off to college. I had lost who I was in that moment of being told you no longer have a job here. So I sort of went through the normal stuff of, you know,
Well, and
how
I
long it's
want to, sorry, I want to chime in real quick and say that we all kind of envy each other in different
sure.
ways. Like it's not
Yeah.
just there's all sorts of, and it's really sad. We all kind of look at what other people have that we're missing, and
hmm
we wonder why we can't have that too, instead of looking at our own situations and just being thankful for where we're at.
hmm Yeah. And so I sort of went through the normal stuff of, how long am I going to be without a job? I never thought I was a person that was going to be without a job. I mean, that just wasn't like in my makeup of what could happen to me. I have this great resume, I have all this, oomph behind me in my career. It was just all gone. And so I I moved into the basement of my parents' house, and I can guarantee you that if you ask my parents, they'll tell you that I was not the child that they thought would live in the basement of their house. Um, I was what 41 or 2 years old at the time. It was 2017. And here I was living in my mother's basement, um, looking for jobs. Looking for a job became my job. I took some personal stances on things and even went and applied for unemployment assistance. It is an insurance program here in North Carolina, and I'm entitled to it. But I also wanted to walk the walk of, what is it like to have to go through those kinds of systems? And because I had no idea how long it was going to take me to find a job, I might have needed that money at some point. I had about $12,000 in the bank, and I was making a lot less money than I make today. Um, but I was like, I got to do what I got to do. Deferred my student loans, um, but still had car payment and insurance and all the things. So I sat for 4 months unemployed, 10 weeks in my mother's basement. I was applying for job after job after job after job. Really had kind of convinced myself that I was probably going to have to go back to DC, which I did not want to do. But it's just a mecca for jobs and it's a mecca for people who've worked in the government. I mean, I do have this small little thing called, 4 years at the White House that just kind of makes you
Doesn't
a
sound that
weirdo. And
small.
but it's a weird thing in some ways. I would tell you that I've had more weird interactions because of it in job interviews post my departure. Just people saying, "Oh, what was it like?" And I'm like, "It's actually not appropriate to ask me." Like what you need to ask me is what skills did I pick up? What did I do? Not what was it like? But anyway, I think it's just people being human, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's their personal curiosity and a little
hmm
bit of jealousy creeping in there of like, that sounds amazing.
Well, it's a job like any other job at the end of the day. I can tell you that. So, I got a job. Some friends of mine called me, and I really thought that they were calling me for a completely different reason. But they owned a company and asked if I would come work with them. And I said, I don't even know what you do. I didn't know what kind of company it was, but they knew me. And this is kind of how Shannon gets jobs. People just go find her and say, "Hey, can you come fix this thing for me? I know you for who you are, and I feel like you can make a difference." And so
That's kind of
um,
awesome.
it is awesome. And like I said, well, people seeing things in me that I might not have seen in myself is definitely been a theme in my professional career, and I'm really grateful for it. But um, so I actually went there, and had an amazing time doing something I had no idea how to do. Experienced an acquisition process where the company was sold, and I got to be right there with them. I had also, the day I started working there after I'd become reemployed, started documenting on social media one day of employment after 126 days of unemployment. And then I did day 2, and I did day 3, and I did day 4. And I decided I was going to make a commitment to do all the way to 126. And so I documented 126 days of employment after 126 days of unemployment, which then turned into a book, which then turned into a podcast. Um, and I had found a publisher who was going to help me really turn the book into more of a tool than something somebody would go to, a local bookstore and buy. But if a company's downsizing, how to do it with compassion and how to help people into that space, and not necessarily thinking that they are less than, because I certainly think that can happen. And I chickened out for a whole lot of reasons. I really felt I'm not good at vulnerability. For anybody out there who is into the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 8. So if you know anything about that, you know that vulnerability is, it's really not something I can even hardly do. Grabbing a hold of my most tender parts for me is hard. And I just didn't feel like I had the support I needed to put that book out. So I sat on it for a while and said, well, I really like podcasts. So 126 Days Stories on Life and Work did launch in March of last year. And I put out, I don't know, 20 some episodes. I'm really allowing other people to tell their story of sort of finding life and work, and how they really mash up against each other and can create all kinds of really interesting tension. So while that's a piece of my story, the other piece that came about in the last couple of years is that I was diagnosed with a neurological disorder that is completely 100% stress related. It's also incredibly rare. So I wear a sunflower on my badge here at my office, and I wear it when I travel through airports. It's the symbol for hidden disabilities and disorders, so that people can, if they're trained in the symbol, then they know that somebody who wears that sunflower has a disability that cannot be seen. So as a mother of autistic children, you probably know that, I
I've
don't know.
never heard of that symbol,
Yeah.
actually. Well, and what's more is my husband's been disabled for the last decade, and his disabilities have been invisible. And
Mhm.
so and he has a neurological condition that causes him to collapse. Um, but I've actually never heard of that symbol, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
absolutely going to go look that up. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, I just found it online because I felt like I needed a way to talk about this. Here I am, this incredibly high functioning human, at least from the outside. Um, I look perfectly, typically developed on the outside. And in July of 2021, I was on my way to work. Well, I was at work and experienced some dizziness walking down a hall. And I'd had a condition called vasovagal syncope before, for about 10 years, and it had no explanation other than maybe my heart rate would drop low, my blood pressure would tank out, and sort of the perfect storm of those two things was that I would faint. But, you know, it's not fun to be functioning in a body that you can't control. And I am not a person that's scared of very much, but fainting is scary for me. I live alone. I, you know, I've hit
I
my
have to
head.
I have to think that fainting would be scary for anybody. I
Right.
mean, that's entirely like you lose control. I mean, anybody's going to be afraid of like not feeling fully in control of their own body, especially when you've been used to being
Yeah.
in control of your body for decades and decades, and then all of a
Right.
sudden it's like, what's happening to me and how do I cope with this, and no one
Mhm.
can tell. There's no like sign on my forehead that says that says something's wrong. And I was caregiver to my husband for a decade, where any bit of stress would send him, he would collapse from stress. He
Yep.
has something called familial episodic ataxia. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, he couldn't vacuum, he couldn't do the dishes, he
Hmm.
couldn't watch our kids because anything that was the least bit stressful, physical or mental, he'd start shaking really bad, he'd collapse to the floor, he couldn't speak. And then we'd go to the doctor and they'd be like, he's just drug seeking, and like
Oh, wow.
not being believed over and over and over and over again. And so I mean, I lived that for a decade as his caretaker, and how
Hmm.
I saw how much that just tore at his self-esteem. And
Hmm.
it's devastating. And it's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I was at work. I experienced the dizziness in the hallway, and I come back into the office and told two of my coworkers, I said, "Yo, I'm dizzy. I need to lay down for 15 minutes. If you'll delay that staff meeting for 15 minutes, just, because I was going to run the staff meeting." So I lay down on the floor, put my feet up, because this is something that I had done for years, having vasovagal syncope. So I felt like it had subsided. I go in my office, I start the meeting, and about 15 minutes into it, I'm like, something is wrong. Put myself on mute, call out to the girl in the office next to me. I said, "Come here." I had her put all my stuff in my car, walk me to my car, and I said, "I think I'm about to have an intraocular migraine." I'd had one about 20 years prior. I said, "I got about 20 minutes and I'm gonna lose my sight. I gotta get." So I drive myself home. Sounds safe. Um, and I get home and I am just rocking. I am dizzy rocking. And my stepfather's a physician, and bless his little soul, I have some weird medical conditions that he can never get to the bottom of. And I called him. I said, "I think I have vertigo. What do I do?" He said, "Take this, that, and the other." I had a friend go to the store and get me some of whatever that was. And it didn't help. And so a couple days later, I'm still experiencing this sort of intermittent rocking sensation. It's not spinning. And I went to my ear, nose, and throat doctor, started down this road. I had leaned down into my car. My dog used to go to work with me every day. I leaned down on my car because the leash was outside the vehicle, and I threw it back in. And when I stood up, I nearly fell over, grabbed a hold of the door of the car, and I was like, something is wrong. So started driving down the road, and I'm like, I'm okay, I'm okay. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm gonna throw up from here to Alaska. Pull over in the Walgreens parking lot, throw up everything I've eaten for like 10 years is how it felt. Got back in the car, drove home, called work and said, "Well, something's wrong." Started with my ENT. They did all of the testing for vertigo, all of which I passed. They're like, "It's not vertigo." And because there's no explanation for this thing, I really started to feel like I was crazy.
That is the worst. Like, that is
It
one of
is.
just the worst things ever. When you go to
Yeah.
the doctor and you're all vulnerable and you're like, okay, I'm in pain. I wish I wasn't. I wish I was just strong and all together, but here's my pain. Fix
Yeah.
it. And then they're
Yeah.
like, ah, no, nothing's wrong. Go back to your life. You're fine. And you're like, and it's so like demoralizing and demeaning. And yeah, okay. Didn't do that. That sucks.
Yeah, and I grew up with doctors. My stepdad's a doctor, my mom was a nurse. I grew up with a lot of medical folks in my family, and none of them could really figure it out either. And, so probably another 2 weeks went by, and again, I'm rocking. I feel like I'm on a boat. And I, the only thing I can equate it to is I went on a cruise many, many, many years ago. And when I got back home, I felt like I had land sickness. So
That
people
makes
will call
total
it,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, people will call it sea legs. And usually it'll subside, after a couple days after you get off the ship. Well, this wasn't going anywhere. And a woman that I worked with said, "I got an ENT that you need to call." So I call this ENT. His name is Dr. Jonathan Moss at Charlotte Ear, Eye, Nose, and Throat. He's the best doctor ever. He 100% saved my life. I go see him, and I had written down all of the things that I had done up to that point to deal with this. It had been about 2, 3 weeks. And the nurse is sitting there asking me questions, and I said, "Ma'am, I cannot answer your questions." The brain fog was so bad that finding words to finish a sentence, finding words to start a sentence, finding words to really say what I meant to say, my brain was so fatigued, and it felt like I had truly lost control of who I was. And so I'm sitting there she's asking, and I said, I just need you to read this piece of paper. This is all I can tell you. And I'm so sick of saying all of this. So Dr. Moss comes in and he made a couple jokes. He's a very he's a great guy. And he said, I know what's wrong with you. And I was like, you do? And he said, yeah, you have silent migraines. And I was like, what? And he said, and I said, what's the rocking, bobbing, and swaying? He said, I think you have migraine-induced vertigo. And I said, it is not vertigo. I am not spinning. I am rocking, bobbing, and swaying. And he said, you have migraine-induced Maudit debarkment syndrome.
I'm
And I was
literally
like,
writing this down because this is so fascinating. I actually haven't like I went through something really similar back in November, and I ended up like I couldn't the brain fog, and I was so happy my husband was with me because he was able to be like, this is not normal. I ended up going to the ER, and they did an MRI to see if I had a brain tumor. I didn't, and the neurologist is booked out for the next 6 months. So they were just like, okay, go. So I have no answers. So as you're telling your story, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how many people have no idea? And your
yeah,
story just helps them so much.
yeah. So I was like, Maudit a what? You know,
Yeah, can
so
you spell that for me?
it's Mal, M-A-L, Day, D-E, debarkment, D-E-B-A-R-Q-U-E-M-E-N-T, syndrome, failure to disembark in French. So he said, I'm going to put you on a medication and it's going to take 90 days for it to work. And I was like, 90 days?
90 days.
I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this for 90 days. At the time, I was the COO of a company that had gone through an acquisition, a company that was, I mean, I loved the place. I wish I could have stayed. Um, but I realized that I was experiencing burnout. And it was not something that I ever thought would happen to me. First of all, I'm a trained therapist. I have a master's degree in counseling. I spent many years, as a therapist for adolescents. It's what I do the minute I wake up in the morning is, I'm really conscious of how I feel. I'm really conscious about how other people feel. What I'm not good at necessarily is listening to that consciousness,
Oh
particularly
yes.
for myself. I have one of those bodies that I will go, 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 go. And my body's like, oh, you're not going to listen to me? Well, guess what? I'm just going to shut you all the way down. And that's exactly what happened. I do believe that my Maudit debarkment syndrome is 100% stress induced. There's a couple iterations of how Maudit debarkment onsets. It can be spontaneous, like mine, or it can be after passive motion, say going on a cruise, riding on a boat, things like that. There are people who have had this syndrome for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years and can't get answers. I feel very lucky that I found Dr. Moss. I will tell you about a week in to that 90 days. I called him and I said, we got to do something more aggressive. I can't put up with this. And he's like, I told you 90 days. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this for 90 days? I'm the COO of a company. I can't be rocking and bobbing and swaying all the time. The only time I felt normal was when I was driving in the car, which makes sense because the body's back under passive motion and the brain is communicating properly at that point. What my brain does is it works to keep me steady on a stable surface when what my eyes are telling it is that I'm moving. So, what
My
happens
mouth
now?
dropped because one of the first things I did was get my vision checked,
Hmm.
and they were
Yeah,
like,
my
no,
vision's great.
it's great.
My vision's great. I wear some, +1 readers and my far away is 15-20. Um, so anyway, I started doing vestibular therapy with a therapist. I also have a tremendous amount of tension and pain in my neck. And right at the base of my skull, sort of where your hairline is, I would have so much pain. And I started doing dry needling, which that is only for the you gotta be ready for some stuff when you do dry needling. But I have a great practitioner in Charlotte, and she's, I had seen her for some other things before, went back to her and I said, here's the deal, here's what's going on. And we worked on it. TMJ was really bad. So these are all things that are stress response. Neck tension, TMJ, probably grinding my teeth at night. I definitely knew I was holding my mouth in a really strange way, almost probably, I would say 80 to 90% of the time. And it's all stress. And, looking back on it, I think I put so much stress on myself to make sure this company was going to do well in the sale process and that the people were going to survive it. And
Well, and
I
I
did.
cannot imagine that any of your other previous jobs before that were low stress. Like being
No,
in
they weren't.
Washington, that's not low stress. Being a
Mm-mm.
therapist is not low stress. Like none of the
No,
things you had done previously. So it's not like you just jumped into this high stress job for the first
right.
time. No, this is a pattern of high stress throughout, your life.
Yeah, and thank you for, encapsulating that and helping me continue to realize that I am a person who's lived with a lot of stress in work, which is the thing I love the most. So,
Well, and the reason that I point that out to you is because totally the same for me. Like that's
mm,
exactly what I've done my whole life. It's like, how do I make this the most elaborate, most crazy thing ever? Oh, I'm gonna stress myself out and and I've been a mom for this whole time. So it's like, okay, I'm
mhm.
gonna hand make every kid's individual Valentine's Day cards, and they're gonna be the most amazing Valentine's Day cards anyone has ever seen ever. And it's like, and now I'm sitting here going, oh, that was kind of dumb, wasn't it? Like that was totally unnecessary. But like in
Yeah.
a totally different way, I've also like given myself boatloads of stress,
Hmm.
like unnecessarily.
Yeah, so I did the vestibular therapy, did the dry needling, got on the medication, and about that 90th day, I was like, "Oh, I almost feel normal." Um, you know, but the thing that I still deal with today, so here we are almost 2 years later, be 2 years this July. The brain fog is still very much there. And I think what's happening is that my brain has to work harder than a typically behaving brain to keep me steady. And I sleep 8 to 10 hours a night. And I think a lot of people that know me, like I've always kind of slept like that. I'm a really good sleeper. I go to sleep. It's like 3, 2, 1 countdown. I'm out and I'm like comatose for 8 hours. It's
Oh my gosh,
wonderful.
I'm totally the
Oh
same,
yeah.
which is hilarious because my husband has insomnia, and so he just never sleeps, and can sleep like a rock all the time.
Oh, I mean,
It's
I think a bomb could go off in my house and I'd be like, "Meh." So, I also take a lot of vitamins. I really do try to rest my brain and, you know, I, I have a high stress job now. Um, and I definitely know that my brain capacity is not what it used to be. And I'm just getting around to a space where I'm able to admit that and I'm able to live into it. And what it doesn't mean is that I can't do this job. What it does mean is I have to take extra care of myself. I've always needed a lot of time alone. I'm very much an introvert. But now it's not that I need time alone, it's that I need time of no interaction and no stress. Like I don't I really like I am a big fan of the focus on your phone, like do not disturb, like turn that sucker off. Um, because I need to not even feel the pressure that someone's going to reach out to me sometimes. I've
I
had to
think
become really, really conscientious about guarding my energy because I know it takes a lot more energy for my brain to do what it needs to.
I think that is such an incredible like lesson for all of us of just the importance of just like being in silence, doing
Hmm.
nothing for periods
Hmm.
of time, which for most of us is not something we ever do. And it's been something I've been having to teach myself and train
Hmm.
myself how to be okay just being in silence. But then the more that you do it, the more you realize how much your brain needs that time
Yeah.
to reset.
Yeah. And some other things I've noticed after having the Monday department on set is I used to be incredibly disciplined and place all this pressure on myself to the house was clean, the laundry was done, meals were prepped. It's just me. So it's not like having to do that in order to manage a household of humans. I kind of quit that because I'm like, you know what? That's some stupid stress I don't need. And it's funny now I'm kind of getting into a phase where I'm like, you know what? I think I need to go back to some of those disciplines because repetition in my day really helps me a lot. I don't have to think about things when things can really become a subconscious action. I notice that I can kind of get through it a little easier. I remember when I first got the job I have right now, and I was driving out to work. I can remember getting to work and being like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired." And now, the route here has become a subconscious thing, and I'm not even thinking about it. The other thing I really try to do is to drive to and from work for at least a little bit with silence. Because if you think about all the things that your brain is doing while you're driving, listening to the radio or a podcast or whatever, talking to the kids in the back seat, whatever, like just remove some of that. Really
Well, and
removing the
not to
clutter.
mention, like, driving itself,
It's crazy.
like, is still a task, even if it's all subconscious,
Yeah.
even if you're so, you've been driving for decades and you're like, "Whatever, I know this." Um, you never know what's gonna happen on the road, and
Right.
so your brain is always still like, you're
Hyper
still doing
focused.
things even
Hmm.
when, so, like, that's all. Do we really need extra on top of that?
Right. Right. And I now I really listen to my body about sleep. My bestie, who on my podcast was known as best friend Mary. She's been a rock through all of this with me and really has been someone who's understood that like this took me for a loop. This is the layoff and then being told you have a neurological disorder and you've been such a high functioning person your whole life. Like it's not the easiest thing I've ever done. And she's like, I think you need to ask your doctor about your sleep. So I actually went to the doctor last Friday and my thyroid had gotten out of whack. I've got Hashimoto's disease. I've got palindromic rheumatism, and I also have vitiligo. So on top of all this, I have 3 autoimmune disorders that I've had for years. So obviously my body is stress responsive. A lot of autoimmune disorders are stress responses. But she said, you need to ask your doctor. So I asked my doctor, I'm like, I sleep 8 to 10 hours a night. She's like, well, if you can bottle that, I'll sell it and give you some of the profit here at the office.
Right?
Yeah.
Guys, I just wanted to pause here for 1 second to let you know about the awesome thing that I'm doing right now. I'm so excited to announce that I'm offering a custom song experience for a small number of people. This is your chance to take your story, your podcast, or your business even, and turn it into a incredible, timeless work that will bring back beautiful, loving emotions for decades to come. This is such a perfect gift for your spouse, for a newborn baby, or for a parent, and it's a really great way to embody your business or your podcast's mission. We're going to meet together several times and deep dive into the message and emotion you want to convey to make sure that you're getting something that you absolutely adore. A custom song is an incredible asset for advertising, for lifting team spirit, and for encapsulating family memories. If you want a custom song, please email customsongsbykaraleigh@gmail.com.
But I do know that I went to the University of Georgia. I'm a huge Georgia Bulldog fan. We were recently going to the national championship for the second year in a row, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's on a Monday. You're gonna stay up. Probably have to take Tuesday off." I was like, "I'll be asleep by halftime." And they're like, "Even something that excites you won't keep you awake." I'm like, "No, I got JOMO. I've always had JOMO, but I really have it now. Joy of missing out. I don't care. Everything's on the internet. I can always go back and look at it. For me, the sleep, brain health, it's so vital. And just making sure that I'm able to talk about it. When I'm having a bad day, I need to talk about it. When the barometric pressure goes up and down, rapidly. Like I'm expecting a 0.32 shift this afternoon. I have these little earphones I will sometimes put in because it slows down the pressure change. Um, I know I'm going to wake up with a headache, and that tends to kind of start things off poorly. Uh,
Ooh, out of curiosity, have headaches. I mean, because migraines are, I guess, associated. But if you didn't know you had migraines, anyways, my question is, were
mhm.
headaches a consistent part of
No.
this? Not at all.
So I have silent migraines, which means you don't get the headache. You get everything else. So one of the things I learned in this process is that a migraine headache is a part of it. There's a whole series of other symptoms from your hair to your toenails that occur with a migraine. And anybody out there who's suffering from migraines or suffering from weird things, go see if silent migraine is not what you have, because the migraine, it's a vasoconstriction in the head that is causing that head pain. Well, for me, I get the vasoconstriction. I just don't get the head pain. Um, but I get everything else that kind of comes along with migraines. So there could be digestive issues and just general fatigue and the aura. I also get kind of a tightening in my jaw and in my temple, that is really strange. But I think where I'm at with all of this now is talking about it. There are so many people out there that have hidden and unseen disabilities who are walking in this building that I'm in right now, and I don't know it, and they may not know what's going on with themselves enough to put words around it. But what does that look like in a healthy workplace when I'm having a bad day? Um, how do I advocate for others? So it could be diabetes. Not everybody who has diabetes looks like someone with diabetes. Like, what does that look like? We don't know.
Well, and I didn't mention this. I have a severely autistic, semi-verbal 11-year-old who has type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
And it was like, when he was 7 and he was diagnosed, he was severely underweight. And it was like, I didn't know anything about type 1 diabetes. And so I was
Mhm.
like, no, that can't be a thing. I've never heard of that. I don't
Yep.
know what that is. And it's something that can affect anyone at any age.
Yep.
And it's just there's so many silent disabilities, or
Mhm.
invisible, I guess I
Mhm.
should say.
Yeah.
And so, like, talking about them is so incredibly important so that we
Yeah.
can be more aware.
Right. And I wear, I forgot my name badge at home today. Oops. But it
No worries.
has a big old sunflower on it. And I work at a construction site right now. We're building a facility, and I was walking the construction trailers and was talking to some of our construction people here. And it's they asked me, "Do you wear that sunflower because you're so shiny or so sunny or something like
How
that?"
cute.
Yeah, and I said, "No, I wear it because I have a hidden disability." And they were like, "What?" And I said, "Well, I have something called Maudie debarkment syndrome." And so then it was like, "Maudie who?" Just like everybody has. And so I explained it to them, and they're like, "So you feel like you're on a boat right now?" And I was like, "Well, not right now, but I might in a minute." I said, "If it's a cloudy day, it might be a smart question to ask me where I'm sailing to," because I certainly,
That's
I'm
so
very
funny.
sensitive to the weather, barometric pressure, that kind of thing. But it also opened a conversation about some of their own health challenges that they had had. These tough construction guys, and I have a ton of respect for them and what they're doing here. And we just got to be human for a second. And I had to travel overseas for this job, which was the first time I'd gotten on a plane since I got the diagnosis. I was horribly nervous about it,
Yeah, I bet.
and flew international, and I was fine the whole time. I was fine when I got there. I was fine when I came back. I felt like, okay, I'm going to be okay. Like, this is a really big step, and I took it, and it's fine. Um, but I also didn't feel stressed like I think I normally would have. I think there something has clicked in my brain to just say, like, I don't know, any day you wake up is probably a pretty good day. And just my perspective is different. I also am much more willing now to own when I'm not doing great.
And
And
that's a beautiful thing.
yeah,
That's a beautiful thing that we can all take from.
yeah. I mean, I, we live in this world, especially now. I'm so glad I'm 48 and not 28. Um, of social media and being beautiful and thin and perfect, and your eyebrows got to be right, and your lashes got to be long and fluffy, and your hair's got to be perfect. And I'm like, I don't know, but can you like put two words together and make a sentence? Can you communicate? Can you express your emotion in a way that makes life easier and better for you? Are you compassionate? Are you kind? I don't care what you look like.
There's a whole lot more things that matter. So much more
Yeah,
than
but
just hair and lashes.
yeah, I just worry that we're coming, we're in a world now that is being created and curated for us, and what is being curated for us may not necessarily be that real. If you think about going into an art museum, all of that art has been chosen by someone to hang on those walls. And I feel like our lives are becoming that way. Netflix is telling us what to watch, uh, whatever else, Instagram is telling us what to buy and those kinds of things. And I'm like,
It
I don't
raises this
know.
question of like, how conscious are you of your
Right.
choices and what you are doing every day and what's influencing you?
Hmm.
Are you just letting the world come in and take over, or are you leading your own life?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think certainly for me, it's also acknowledging you have a neurological disorder, saying it out loud, saying it to my family, talking about when I have a bad day. Some of my work peers recently watched me stumble. I had said out loud that I was having a rough day. We had some rainstorms moving in, and I was standing up. I had been sitting on the floor because sometimes that can just help me feel really grounded if I sit on the floor. And I felt a little better, so I stood up and I was standing in front of a chart writing with markers, and we're having a discussion, and I just tripped right over my own 2 feet. And they saw it and they were like, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "Is that because you're dizzy?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm okay. Like it's not the first time it's happened." Um, but yeah, being so much more conscientious about the fact that what's going on inside of me is unseen, and I think what that's done for me is open my eyes to say what is going on inside of other people that I can't see.
Ooh, I love it.
Hmm.
Humanizing each other.
Yeah,
What are
and
the, yeah,
and
sorry.
really taking the opportunity to talk about that. Yeah, I have a great job. I work in a wonderful place with wonderful people, but we all don't have to be 100% all the time, and let not be okay.
I love that. So tell me how you found sunshine in these really hard moments. I mean, this is something that has completely changed your entire life.
Um, I think that a word that's been coming up for me a lot lately is grace. Like, I don't think I've been really graceful towards myself. I don't think that I've offered a lot of grace to a lot of other people in my life. I've always been very hard driving, um, you know, commanding and demanding the best. Um, and then you get smacked in the face with something that you can't control. And so for me, it's really about stepping back and looking at every situation with a different lens of compassion and caring that I didn't have before, because now I need people to see me with that lens. Um, and because Maori debarkment is so rare, and so many doctors don't know what it is, I think the sunshine for me too is talking about this so that other people who have it, that potentially we can get some research around it. Um, we can, you go into online support groups and things like that, and people are just grasping at straws for help. They're like, did you, has anybody done, what was it, hyperbaric chamber therapy? And I'm like, why would that help? So I'm sure on those groups they think I'm a complete jerk, but I'm like, this is a brain eye disconnect. Why would hyperbaric chamber help? Then people talk about let's go gluten free. I'm like, y'all, we are past the days of everything is gluten related. We are past the days. Unless you have tested for sensitivity or you have
Yeah.
celiac, I don't know that taking gluten out of your diet is going to help. I'm like, I eat tons of gluten. I love pasta. Um, I really hope that the community can actually start to make some strides that are scientific in nature, um, and that are replicable for other people. So what's clear for me is I needed to be on an antihypertensive drug, which is what I'm on. I also take 10 milligrams of Lexapro. So let's manage some anxiety. Let's keep everything calm. And then the antihypertensive is really, it's to lower your blood pressure, but my blood pressure has actually always been really, really good, really healthy. It's probably the most
Well, so
healthy health marker that I have.
then I'm curious if it made your blood pressure lower.
No, it did not. So
Interesting.
I watch my blood pressure like a hawk because of the vasovagal syncope. There's a blood pressure cuff in my house. It's never very far from me. And I usually, what'll happen is the diastolic number will drop out. And I'll usually have to be on the floor with my feet up to prevent a fainting episode. But it didn't touch I'm usually I'm usually 120 over 80, if not lower.
Which I'm pretty sure is perfect.
It is perfect. It is perfect. It's what you want to have. So, I really, the sunshine for me now is I want to talk about maldated debarkment. And I want to talk about the fact that people are walking around with these unseen and hidden disabilities. They appear high functioning. They appear typically developed. They appear, quote unquote, healthy. But
Well,
they're
and the
tired.
question is, how many of us are working so hard to appear normal?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say 2 out of 5 days of the work week, I'm working really hard to appear normal. But I'm doing really good today. I'm doing really good with Maori debarkment in general. But I am very fortunate to have found Dr. Moss. I'm very fortunate that I'm not a person that, I feel one of the things that's really hard in our medical system here in the US is that because it is hard to sometimes get care, that people will just grasp at straws and they'll start taking and doing, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's not going to help anybody with
Out of
anything
desperation.
out
Well,
of
and
desperation.
isn't that the truth? I mean, you said you worked in addiction recovery. That's the entire basis of addiction is that there's a problem and I don't know how to get out of pain. I
Hmm.
don't know how to fix my problem. There's nothing else that I can see as available to me, and it's turning in whatever direction I can find to get out of pain.
Yeah, and I think until Maori debarkment and other syndromes like it get a scientific base, it's just really hard. There are clinical trials being run on it. There are physicians out there who are actively seeking to treat it properly. I don't know how my doctor knew what to do, but he did, and I'm really grateful for that. And when people ask me how I became symptom free and fairly quickly, and got into remission fairly quickly, I say the the thing that my doctor gave me is what worked for me. I have no idea what's going to work for you, but here's what worked for me. And the other thing is I recently moved and I had, this diagnosis, and I was so worried about going to another doctor. And they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to keep giving you this medication because I can really stay on the medication for the rest of my life. It's so benign. It's not going to matter. And I said, there's a brochure that's available on the Maori Debarkment Foundation's website. I handed it to her. I said, this is what I have. This is the medication I take. Here's the doctor who diagnosed me. Call him. He knows who I am. And she was like, I believe you. And I was like, oh, okay, great.
Why is it so hard to find doctors who will just believe their patients?
Well, the thing is, so again, growing up in a family with a bunch of medical people, I've seen the evolution of medicine from the outside, and I think there was a time when doctors could educate their patients and could say, let's try a battery of things to see what will work. Now we have commercials on TV telling us what medications to ask for. We have a society of anxious humans who want to feel perfect all the time. Nobody has guaranteed that for you. We have environmental conditions that I think are making our bodies struggle.
Well, and the stress and what's our societal expectation of constant stress and constant
Yeah,
go go go, like that cortisol that will kill you.
right. And then I was gonna say, and then there's a thing called stress that will actually kill you. And we are, we're just all burning the candle at both ends. And And until people just agree that's not the way to be, I have counterparts that are in Europe, and I can sense the calm. Like when I went over there, I could sense the calm, and they go to lunch in the company cafeteria. They don't take their laptops with them. We're all in there with our laptops, like, oh my God, I got 5 minutes. I got to do, XYZ. And I'm like, no, we don't. It's going to be there. Um, I used to, be a person that would go home at the end of the day and then continue to watch my phone and all that junk. And I don't do that anymore because my brain can't handle it. And I know that. If somebody needs me, they certainly could call upon me. But that stress that's self-induced because you're trying to keep up with something that's not even real is, I think, really where the world is failing us and we are failing ourselves. The American culture of working
Yeah.
24/7, 365. Nobody else in the world does that but us. In the country where our other sister site is, they're required to give people 6 weeks off by law.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
things still
beautiful.
happen. They're still very functional. So, my sunshine at this point is recognizing that I'm not perfect, never was. And I really want to talk about this syndrome because there's so many people out there suffering.
This has been just really beautiful, like so beautiful. And I love, talking to people about these different rare syndromes, because it's like, oh my gosh, awareness is like the number one key, because how can you fix anything if you don't know?
Mm-hmm.
How can we improve? How can we be more compassionate to people around us if we don't know what that sunflower means?
Right.
And we just assume that it's just a pretty flower,
Right.
and it
Do you
doesn't
wear that
mean
because you're sunshiny?
right.
No.
And it's amazing just how incredibly important it is for us to
Mm-hmm.
talk about this and get this word out there. So thank you so much. You've been so vulnerable and so open, and I really
Oh,
appreciated
you said the
that.
V word.
I
Don't say
did
that
say
to
the V
me.
word, and I was going to totally recommend that you read Brene Brown and
Oh,
her
I've
work.
read
Oh,
everything.
I
I've read
love it.
everything.
She's so great.
So I've read everything. I've seen her in person. She speaks in a language that scares me to death because that's her big world. The thing that has helped me the most is the Enneagram. I really have been studying it for about 8 years, and it's just helped me chill out a little.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's been amazing. So tell me how we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me
Places.
on LinkedIn. My name is Shannon Weatherly. There's not a whole lot of Shannon Weatherlys out there, but you can find me there. You can find me on Facebook if you try. I think my name right now is Shannon D-E-E, Dub, D-U-B. I hate Facebook, so I try to remain a little bit elusive. And also, I have stopped my podcast because I got too busy and I listened to myself. But if you're interested in going back and hearing those initial stories, it's 126 Day Stories on Life and Work, and it is available on all major platforms.
That's amazing. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but did you say you had a book?
So I never published the book. I chickened out.
Okay.
It
Well, you
became a
can do it.
podcast instead.
Yes. Okay. Well, you can do it. I bet so many people would be amazed to hear that, because especially since COVID and
Yeah.
everything that went on with that, like the unemployment, like the emotional roller coaster
Hmm.
that is so hard for people to take, and to know that somebody else has been through it is just really, really helpful.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you for the platform you're giving folks to tell their stories of seeking sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It matters, and everybody matters. People matter. Go out there and tell somebody that today.
Really, really true. Thank you so, so much.
Hmm. Thank you.
I hope you have an amazing day.
I will. I always do.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness, I loved this episode so much, and I want you guys to know that, like, after I interviewed Shannon, because of everything that I learned from her story, and like I was able to go to my doctor and use like the words and the specific like things that I actually like learned from her story, and I eventually was diagnosed with vestibular migraines. Like I was having silent migraines, and because of Shannon's story and all of that, like I was able to finally get relief from this thing that I had been dealing with for about 6 months that was really severely impacting my life. And so I am just so super appreciative of Shannon sharing her story, because I personally was dealing with like this invisible like thing that was taking over my life. And so because of Shannon's bravery in sharing such a vulnerable thing with her own struggles, it actually helped me specifically. And so I really hope that there are, other people who, maybe are getting answers. I had no idea before, diving into this whole like silent migraine world that like you could be dealing with something like that just had no pain, and yet it was still considered a migraine. And so I was so grateful for Shannon's help and the, inspiration that sparked to like dive into that journey. So I just found it to be super helpful for me personally. So I hope that, is able to help more people, but it was really, really helpful for me. So anyways, here are my very, very favorite takeaways. Number 1, any day you wake up is probably a pretty good day. Number 2, I'm willing to own when I'm not doing great. Number 3, how conscious are you of your choices and what you're doing every day and what's influencing you? Are you just letting the world come in and take over, or are you leading your own life? Number 4, I'm so much more conscientious about the fact that what's going on inside me is unseen. And I think what that has done for me is opened my eyes to say, what's going on inside other people that I can't see? Number 5, we all don't have to be 100% all the time, and that's okay. Number 6, it's really about stepping back and looking at every situation with a different lens of compassion and caring that I didn't have before, because now I need people to see me with that lens. And number 7, how many of us are working so hard to appear normal? Oh my goodness, so many great quotes. You can find Shannon on LinkedIn. Definitely go follow her. And then make sure you check out her podcast on Spotify. It is 126 Days, Stories on Life and Work. Shannon's incredible. Definitely go check her out. Follow her on all of the social platforms that you can find her on. She said she doesn't love Facebook, but you can go find her on LinkedIn for sure. She's got so much to share. I know that there's going to be some super amazing stuff on her podcast as well. You can also go check out my website, KaraleighGarrison.com, if you want more information about a custom song. There's all sorts of stuff on there. There's some samples of like other custom songs I've done, and then you can send me an email at customsongsbykaraleigh@gmail.com if you are interested in having a custom song done. They are amazing. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely reach out. And then last but not least, before we head off for the day, I wanted to remind you to go listen to my album. It's also called Seeking Sunshine, and it is so amazing, and it's been out for a month. So I'm really excited for you guys to go hear that whenever you get a chance. So I'm going to leave you with a song, and I hope you have such an amazing day.
Started out on our epic quest. We did not know what horrors awaited us, so we did not discuss. We knew in our hearts our love would be enough to see us through. But if we knew what we know now, we'd make it through somehow. Hanging by a thread, afraid of what's in front of us, filled with hope and dread. If one thread should break before we reach our goal, who'd be there to catch our desperate sinking souls? Standing on the precipice, hanging by a thread, searching for the vision to see